Welcome to Cozy Noah Vibes, where we listen, relax, and gradually drift into sleep. I'm your host, Noah. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We are starting a dreamy 3-part series of the classic story, Beauty and the Beast. This is a perfect autumn story to guide you into a lovely evening. You can catch the second and third parts this Wednesday and Thursday. For our premium supporters, we'll also be releasing a special to our compilation of Beauty and the Beast on Thursday. Before we dive into this week's fairy tale adventure, let's take a moment to settle down, releasing any unease from your body and mind. Make sure you feel comfortable, and as you come to a stillness, lengthen your breaths, especially your exhales. Try to focus on your breathing, letting the slow, steady rhythm become a calming experience. As I speak to you here, I try to say things I would want to hear myself if I were listening to this to fall asleep. Throughout my life, falling asleep has been a challenge, and there are still nights when I struggle to sleep, but I have learned to stay calm, not getting tense about insomnia. Yes, it may make the next day more challenging, but getting anxious only brings more wakeful snores. So remember, as you listen tonight, you can use your breath to soothe any stress, tension, or worries. It's a simple and effective way to calm your nervous system and guide you into a beautiful night, especially when you combine these deep breaths with a dreamy bedtime story like this one, an old tale. So without further ado, let's enter the fairy tale world of Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there was a merchant named Lord who had staked his entire fortune on a fleet of ships, but they all sank at sea. He was a widower, so he didn't have to bring this bad news home to a wife, but he had 6 children who had grown accustomed to a relatively luxurious life. When debts started pressing and rumors spread about the family's bankruptcy, most of the children found it hard to accept. As days turned into weeks and the ships didn't appear in port, Lord had to start selling their fine furniture, carriages, and even his daughter's jewelry and expensive clothes. They had to abandon their luxurious home and move to a small cottage on the outskirts of the city. Lord frequently traveled to visit business partners, trying to find investors to help him rebuild his business. When he traveled, his children, 3 boys and 3 girls, were left to fend for themselves at home. Though they were almost adults, the 3 boys and the 2 older daughters were of little use when it came to practical skills. They had been used to a life of leisure. The youngest daughter, named Camille, was the most willing to take on the necessary household chores now that they had no servants. Perhaps it was her impressionable age, or her sweeter, more determined nature. For whatever reason, Camille did her best to learn the basics of managing a household. In fact, she was the only one genuinely liked by the villagers. Lawrence's children had few friends, making their situation worse, as the 5 older children made no effort to adapt to their new life. They did nothing to prove themselves capable, nor did they try to please neighbors who might help them. Camille, however, sought advice from villagers on unfamiliar skills, such as baking, sewing, gardening, and chicken farming. As the villagers gradually appreciated her willingness to learn and work hard, their wariness turned into sincere affection. In this way, over time, she became the glue holding Lauren's family together. While the 5 older children still struggled to accept their fate, Camille ensured they had a tidy home, and there was always food on the table. One day, after nearly 2 years of living this way, Laurent received word that one of his missing ships had appeared in port. With most of the cargo intact, the whole family cheered at this miraculous news. The 5 older children declaring their lives among the villagers were finally over. Camille was happy for their joy, but the news wasn't as significant to her as it was to the others. She had come to love their little cottage, with its tidy garden and the scent of fresh bread. Though seeing the rest of the family content would be nice, she wasn't sure she wanted to return to their former life of idleness. She had become someone who liked being useful. To reclaim his property, Laurent had to ride to the port, a 2-day journey. Once there, he could arrange to properly distribute his recovered wealth and hire a comfortable carriage to bring him home. In anticipation of their improved fortunes, he asked each child what gift they wanted. The 5 older children requested elaborate ornaments. They wanted silk shoes, hats with shiny buckles, intricately decorated hats, velvet cloaks, furs, and jewelry. Only Camille remained silent, seeming to seriously consider her request. When her father turned to her and asked what she wanted, she hesitated. "Actually, Father, I've always dreamed of seeing a rose," she said. "In this part of the country, they don't grow, and they're so exotic and expensive. If you could bring me a rose, any color, that would be wonderful." He was amused by his youngest daughter's strange wish, but he was happy to oblige. Privately, he thought he would also bring her a necklace or other trinket to go with the flower. The morning he departed was clear, and Camille carefully packed the saddle bags with what he would need for the journey, and with a slightly tearful smile, she saw him off. The others were more casual, used to their father's trips. They only cared about the gifts he would bring back. As he rode away down the sun-dappled woodland path, only Camille waited outside the cottage until he was out of sight. She had a strange feeling of unease, but she kept it to herself. After all, their fortune had clearly taken a turn for the better. While Laurent's children waited at the cottage, he rode steadily toward the port city, filled with anticipation of reclaiming his wealth and status. He had indeed suffered great losses, but with his ship's cargo, he could start his business again and perhaps build a new fleet. His mind was full of dreams of the spices, silks, and other goods he might import in the future. However, when he arrived at the port, the dream was shattered. His ship had indeed reappeared, with most of the cargo intact, but word of his lucky news had spread quickly, and many creditors moved swiftly. When Laurent came to claim his property, It had already been used to settle many of his debts. He contacted merchant after merchant in vain, pleading for extensions on his large bills, but to no avail. In the end, he was debt-free, but he was also empty-handed. He had no money to invest, let alone buy gifts for his family. He was so despondent that he didn't even want to stay overnight in the city without properly preparing himself or considering the weather or sending any communication ahead. Lord rode his tired horse away from the town, heading back along the country path that had brought him to the port. Not long after leaving the city, the sky darkened, and a storm hit suddenly. Thunder and lightning crashed, and rain poured down. Desperate, Lawrence sought shelter, and after a time of wandering, he stumbled upon a mysterious castle. Lawrence was puzzled to find no one in the castle, but he couldn't resist the urge to find shelter, so he entered the castle. Although no one appeared to greet him, he found a comfortable room and a sumptuous dinner table. Despite the strangeness and mystery, Lawrence decided to stay the night. The next morning, while walking in the castle garden, Lawrence remembered Camille's request and decided to pick a beautiful rose to take home. At the moment he picked the rose, a huge beast suddenly appeared, accusing him of theft. Lawrence explained the situation, telling the beast it was for his youngest daughter, Camille. The beast listened and then set a condition. Lawrence must send one of his children to the castle in his place, or face death himself. With no other choice, Lawrence agreed to the beast's demand. Back home, Lawrence told his family what had happened. While his 5 older children refused to go to the castle, Camille bravely accepted her fate to save her father. She went to the castle to live with the beast. At first, she was terrified and disgusted by the beast, but over time, she discovered the beast was kind and gentle. They gradually built a deep friendship, and eventually, Camille fell in love with the beast. Her Rulov broke the curse on the beast, revealing him to be a handsome prince. They lived happily together, sharing their happiness with Lawrence and his other children. Thank you for listening tonight. I hope this story brought you relaxation and joy. Wishing you a peaceful night and sweet dreams. See you next time.